Her true story, from Alaska. My son drove off while I waited at the airport curb, so I froze the account he used for his business. He called me 52 times that night. The curb outside Terminal C was chaos. Cars honked, engines idled, people shouted names into cell phones and waved signs for arriving family. I stood still amid it all, clutching the handle of my worn suitcase, trying to ignore the sting in my joints after the 6-hour flight from Fairbanks. The wind bit through my coat. The sky above was gray, threatening snow. I had layered, but it was a city cold, sharper, more impatient. I had just texted him. "I'm here, near exit 5, wearing the red scarf." He responded with a thumbs up. Then, 5 minutes later, I saw his car pull into the drop-off lane, slick and silver, music thumping from behind tinted windows. It was the car I helped him buy years ago when he said no bank would loan to a kid from nothing. I had believed in him then. I thought he believed in me, too. The window rolled down halfway. He did not even get out. He looked at me like I was someone he barely recognized, or worse, someone he wished he had not seen at all. "Are you serious with this?" he snapped, voice cutting through traffic noise. "I told you not to bring the ugly suitcase. It's embarrassing." I took a step forward, smiling gently, lifting a hand. "Hello to you too, son. It's good to see you." He leaned his head out, glancing behind him. "I can't park here," he hissed. "I'm not paying $40 just to pick up a retired old lady. You're not some VIP. Stand on the curb like everybody else. Get used to it." I froze. His passenger door stayed locked. Behind him, I could see someone in the front seat, a young woman with sharp cheekbones and perfect nails, chewing gum and scrolling through her phone. She didn't look up. He rolled his eyes. "Don't make a scene. I'm meeting someone in 20 minutes. Just grab an Uber or something. Don't guilt-trip me. I showed up, didn't I?" Then, before I could respond, before I could even ask about the birthday party or if my room was ready or how the kids were, he rolled the window back up. The car merged into traffic and was gone. Just like that. I was still holding the scarf, my hand raised as if in greeting when my phone buzzed. One message. "Book your own Uber. I'm busy." That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just dismissal. Like I was a stray package left in the wrong terminal. The wind gusted again, rattling the plastic sign over the bench. I lowered myself down slowly, my knees cracking, the metal cold against the back of my legs. My suitcase, faded, patched, loyal, sat beside me like a dog waiting for instructions. All around me, other people were reuniting. Hugs, laughter, tears. A boy ran into his grandfather's arms. A couple kissed beneath a welcome home banner. It might as well have been another planet. I sat there quietly, breathing through my nose, willing the sting in my chest to settle into something manageable. I did not cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I had cried enough in my life to know when it would matter and when it would not. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out my old phone, and opened the banking app I hadn't touched in months. The signal was weak, but it loaded. I tapped through the layers of security he had forgotten I still had access to. And there it was. The business account I had helped him set up 12 years ago, the account that had kept his dream alive, that I had funded from my savings and from the sale of my cabin's second lot. At the time, he said it was just until he got on his feet. He needed my name, my credit score, my trust. I gave him all three. He had kept the account active under both our names, probably because it never occurred to him that I'd look at it again. He was the CEO now, self-declared and publicly branded on all his social media. He had photo shoots, hashtags, a line of overpriced coffee beans, but the truth was right there in the details. I was still the primary, he was just a user. A very privileged, very replaceable user. The number at the top was clear, $482,617.21. I stared at it for a long moment, not in anger, in clarity. I tapped once, then again. Then I scrolled to the section marked Controls. There, in small letters, was the option Freeze Account. I placed my thumb on the button and paused. The wind howled around me. A plane roared overhead. Somewhere a child cried, and I pressed. Not hard, not angrily, just enough. The screen blinked, confirmed. Account frozen. I slipped the phone back into my coat pocket. Then I leaned back on the bench, folded my hands in my lap. and waited for the night to fall. It had not always been like this. There was a time, long before the tinted windows and tailored suits, when my son used to sit at the kitchen table in our little house in Fairbanks, his fingers wrapped around a chipped mug, his eyes lit with dreams too big for the room we were in. He talked about coffee like it was art. Not just caffeine and cups, but community, conversation, the warmth of something shared. He said he wanted a place where people could sit and forget their troubles for 5 minutes. He said he wanted to build something that mattered. I believed him. I believed in him. When the lease on that house expired and the landlord raised rent beyond what our pensions could bear, I told him, let's not renew. I can downsize, you focus on the shop. We moved into a 1-bedroom cabin outside of town, me and my dog Lucky. It was cold, drafty, but it was ours. I learned to split wood. Learned to live without a dryer. I gave up Saturday night bingo to save on gas. Meanwhile, he worked. Or so I thought. He pitched his dream to me like a business plan but asked for the money like a son. He said no one would give him a loan without collateral, that banks still saw him as a kid with no assets. But I had good credit, clean history, a solid name. Just help me get started, Ma, he said. Stand in for me. Be the primary. I'll take care of everything. I swear. I signed the papers the next day. The amount wasn't small. It was everything I had from the house sale, every bit of my retirement cushion. Enough to set up the lease, buy equipment, design the logo, and get his website off the ground. He named it Blue Ember Roasters. I used to smile at that name. He said it reminded him of winter mornings in Fairbanks, cold on the outside, warmth within. At the grand opening, he introduced me to customers as the reason this place exists. He kissed the top of my head in front of the cat, said, "My mom's the backbone of this business." It was the last time he said that out loud. After that, the thank yous faded. The check-ins got shorter. The updates stopped coming altogether. But I never asked, not once, because I trusted that I had done the right thing. A mother is supposed to let go when it's time, right? Let them grow, lead, build. You do not raise a child for your benefit. You raise them so they can stand without you. Still, there were signs. He stopped calling me Ma, started saying Anna in emails. He posted photos with investors, influencers, and people who looked nothing like the world we came from. His cafe grew into a brand, but I was no longer part of the story. I was just the name on the papers he hoped people would forget. I told myself it was okay, that he was busy, that he meant well. Until today. Until he rolled down the window, said those words, and drove off like I was a mistake in his calendar. Now, sitting on this bench with my fingers still cold from the wind, I could see it clearly. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a shift, a slow, quiet betrayal that began the moment he stopped needing me, but still used me. And still, I had not said a word. Not when he changed the passwords and told me it was for security. Not when the quarterly reports stopped arriving. Not when I had to ask a neighbor to look up the shop's hours online because he had not answered my calls in weeks. I had taken it all in silence. Because silence, to a mother, sometimes feels like patience. But tonight, on the curb of a city I had traveled so far to reach, alone and unwelcome, I understood the difference. Silence can be a gift, but it can also be a grave. And I was done burying myself alive for someone who had already written my name out of the story. The hotel lobby was quiet by the time I checked in. The clerk was polite but perfunctory. He did not ask why an old woman was traveling alone, why my cheeks were still flushed from standing in the cold, or why my voice shook just slightly when I asked for a room for one night only. He handed me the keycard and pointed toward the elevator. The room was clean, sterile. A place meant for transitions, not for living. I set down my suitcase, took off my coat, unwrapped my scarf slowly, as if unwinding the insult still clinging to it. Then I sat at the edge of the bed, took a deep breath, and opened my phone again. The screen was dim, my hands were tired, but I knew exactly where to go. The bank app took a few seconds to load, longer than I remembered. Maybe because I hadn't opened it in so long, or maybe because, for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what I might find inside. It asked for a passcode. I entered the numbers from memory. My granddaughter's birthday. 6 digits that had once brought cake and laughter and tiny handprints on the kitchen wall. Now they brought access. And there it was, the business account. Blue Ember Roasters Holdings LL Halpern. I stared at that line for a long time. There was a time I thought my name there was just symbolic, that it meant little more than history. That he had taken full control and I was merely a placeholder in a system that no longer cared about who started what. But the truth was clearer than any bank statement. He never removed me, never transferred ownership. He must have assumed I would never log in again, that I would forget the structure, the agreement, the fine print, but I hadn't, and now it was all in front of me. Transaction logs, vendor invoices, payroll reports, tax filings, all under my name, all dependent on the trust I had given him when he said, "Just until I get started, Ma, just until I'm strong enough to stand alone." The balance glowed on the screen. $482,617.21. It was not just a number. It was my home sold in Fairbanks. My retirement fund cashed early. My winter coat sacrificed for his espresso machine. My Friday night dinners skipped so his website could launch. It was every time I had said yes when the safer answer was no. He thought that money was his legacy. But it was mine. I scrolled to the section labeled Account Controls. A single line, simple and understated. Freeze account. I hovered over it. My finger didn't tremble, but my breath did. I let it sit there for a moment, and in that moment, I remembered everything. The voicemail he left last Christmas. Too busy, maybe next year. The birthday card I sent that was never acknowledged. The photo he posted online, posing with strangers, calling them family, while I watched from across the country. And then, tonight, the window rolling down, the words like poison in public air. "You're not a VIP. Stand on the curb like everyone else." He had looked at me like I was baggage, like I was something he had outgrown. He chose image over inheritance. He chose convenience over compassion. He chose to drive away. And now it was my turn to choose. I tapped the button. A prompt appeared. "Are you sure you want to freeze this account? This will disable all transactions immediately." I smiled, not in vengeance, in clarity. I tapped yes, the screen blinked, then updated. Status, frozen. No alarm, no warning, just a silent severing, a quiet reclaiming. I leaned back, set the phone on the nightstand, and looked at the ceiling. There were no fireworks, no applause, only silence. And in that silence a truth settled in my bones. He had forgotten who I was, but I hadn't. And now, neither would he. The first call came 5 minutes after I froze the account. I was still sitting in the hotel room, hands folded in my lap, the phone resting screen up on the nightstand. When it lit up, I didn't flinch. I just watched the name flash across it, Aaron, and listened as it vibrated once, then again. It stopped. Then came another, then another. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I just sat there in the quiet hum of the room's heater, watching my son's name appear again and again, like a silent storm trying to batter its way back in. By the 6th call, the first text came through. "Mom, something's wrong. The business account's frozen. Our vendors can't pull payments. What's going on?" I didn't respond, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I had said too much already. For too many years, in too many ways he refused to hear. The calls kept coming. 9, 15, 22. A new text. "Did you log in? Did you touch something by mistake? Tell me now, this is serious." Still, I said nothing. I stood, moved to the window and looked out over the quiet parking lot below. The streetlights cast long shadows over slush and asphalt. Somewhere far off, a plow pushed snow like a slow breath across the city's chest. People were getting ready for bed, brushing their teeth, tucking children in, living lives built on normalcy. My son was unraveling. 28 calls. Another text, the tone shifting now. "Mom, fix this. You have no idea what you've done. This affects other people, clients, contracts. You're ruining everything." The next came a minute later. "Undo it, now, or you'll regret it." And then, just like that, another shift. "Please, Mom. I didn't mean that. Just, please, I'll explain. I didn't think you'd actually log in. I didn't think, look, this is just a misunderstanding. We can talk. We can fix it." I closed my eyes. 40 calls. I sat on the edge of the bed, my back to the window now, phone still lighting up like a warning beacon. Another text. I swear, I'll make it right. Please, don't do this. You can't. You're my mother. My mother? The woman left at the curb? The woman he wouldn't walk 10 steps to greet? The woman he humiliated in front of his girlfriend like a forgotten object. Now I was his mother again? Call 44. 45? He was spiraling. Another text. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said what I said. Please, Mom, just unlock it tonight and we can talk tomorrow. Please, I'm on my knees here. I pictured him exactly like that, alone, frantic, pacing the slick tile floors of his over-designed cafe, trying to figure out how to keep payroll moving, how to answer supplier questions, how to explain to his investors why the main account was inaccessible. 50 calls. Another message. I'll come get you. Right now. We'll talk. I'll make it up to you. Just say something. Anything. But I had nothing left to say. All the words I might have used had dried up somewhere between that airport curb and the long walk to the hotel shuttle. Somewhere in the years he replaced my name with silence, my phone calls with calendar excuses, my presence with performance. 51, 52. I turned the phone over so the screen faced down. The room felt quieter now. Not empty, just still. The kind of stillness that comes after a storm has passed, not because it is over, but because there is nothing more to take. I stood once more and returned to the window. Outside it had begun to snow, softly at first, then steady. Each flake fell like a whisper I no longer needed to say out loud. I watched them gather on the ledge, on the street below, on the tops of parked cars, erasing outlines, softening everything sharp and cruel into something white and soundless. I wondered if he would sleep tonight. I wondered if he would look at the ceiling and remember every word he had shouted across that open car window, every inch he refused to move to make space for me, every message he did not send on holidays or birthdays or any of the days in between. And I wondered if this, finally, would be the moment he realized a mother's silence is not always surrender. Sometimes it is the only truth left. Morning came with no apology. The sun was pale through the hotel curtains, casting a cold light on the same phone that had stayed silent for hours now. No new calls. Just a thread of unread messages and an inbox cluttered with desperation. I dressed slowly. My bones ached, but not in the usual way. They ached with clarity, with finality. Downstairs, the lobby was quiet. I poured myself a cup of weak coffee from the communal urn and took a seat near the window, where I could watch the snow melt in patches along the curb. The city was already moving, people in suits, backpacks, faces tilted toward phones, lives in motion, and then motion turned toward me. A familiar figure burst through the glass doors, hair wild, eyes hollow. My son. He looked like a man thrown out of his own life. His jacket was half-zipped, shoes soaked, phone in one hand, the other clenched. He rushed to the front desk, frantic. Room 206, he gasped. Anna Halpern, my mother, I need to talk to her, please. The receptionist glanced at me, unsure. I shook my head once. No visitors, she said gently. I'm sorry. He turned, eyes locking on me. He moved toward the sitting area, but I held up a single hand, calm, firm. He froze mid-step. His face crumpled. Right there, in front of strangers, he broke, shoulders shaking, voice cracking. Mom, please, I need you to fix this. The orders are canceled. The supplier wants cash in advance. Our merchant processor froze payouts. Payroll's due Monday. I can't. He swallowed hard. They think I'm a fraud. I said nothing. From across the lobby, I watched as he tried to find the right words, the right angle, the right trick to pull me back into the role I'd played for so long. The fixer, the believer, the safety net. But that role had expired the moment he left me on the curb like a piece of trash. His voice cracked again. Even Mia left. She posted this thing on Instagram. Never invest your heart in someone who can't pay their debts. His laugh was bitter. She blocked me. Me. He sank to his knees, not out of respect, out of collapse. A few guests turned to look. The receptionist hesitated behind the desk. I remained seated, spine straight, hands resting gently on my lap. Then I picked up my phone and typed a message. Just one line. I handed it to the front desk clerk. Please give this to him. She walked it over, placed the phone gently into his hand. He read it, and his face changed. This is not revenge. This is a reminder. Your mother is still alive." He stared at the screen for a long moment, then lowered it slowly. He looked up at me again, pleading, but I had nothing left to give. No comfort, no cash, no rescue. He rose shakily to his feet, nodded once, and walked back out into the snow, not like a man wronged, but like a boy finally seeing the cost of forgetting who held the door open for him all those years. I turned back to my coffee. It was still warm. The office looked the same as it had 20 years ago, same wood-paneled walls, same faint scent of old leather and winter coats. The receptionist had changed, now a younger woman with glasses and a polite smile, but the warmth of the place remained. That was why I came back. "Anna Halpern," I told her. She stood. "Mr. Grayson is expecting you right this way." Harold Grayson had been my lawyer since the day I sold the house in Fairbanks. He had walked me through paperwork I barely understood, read every line twice, and never once made me feel small for asking what capital gains meant. When my son had needed help opening the business, Harold had drawn up the joint account structure himself. Now, I was here to undo it. He rose when I stepped into the office, the same sturdy man with the same steel-gray hair, now thinner, now slower. "Anna," he said, with that voice like a steady fire. "You look like a woman with something to settle." I smiled faintly. "That obvious?" He gestured to the seat across from him. "When you come in wearing your church coat and not your gardening one, I know it's serious." I sat, pulled the manila folder from my bag. He set it on his desk. "I need to transfer full control," I said. "Remove my name, sever all legal ties. If it sinks, I won't be holding the rope." He opened the folder, reviewed the account documentation. "This is the same account we set up 12 years ago." I nodded. He looked at me, eyes sharp but kind. "You do realize legally you're in control. You don't need to transfer anything. You can freeze, dissolve, redirect, restructure. It's all yours." "I know," I said, "but I don't want to control it. I just want to be out of it." He studied me for a moment, then he leaned back. "You're sure?" I nodded once. He tapped his pen against the folder. "I can dissolve your authority and notify the financial institution, but once you're off, that's it. You don't get back in. That's the point." He scribbled a few notes, then paused. "Anna," he said carefully, "do you want to include any conditions? Future clauses, protections, something to ensure what happened doesn't happen again?" I took a breath. Then I said, clearly and without hesitation, "Just make sure he can't take anything more from me. I'm not a cash machine. I'm not a silent investor. I'm his mother. And that should have been enough." He nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "We'll draw up the paperwork. I'll make sure your exit is ironclad." We worked in quiet for a while. He asked for a few signatures, some initials, a confirmation of ID. The legal dance of severance. As I signed the last document, I felt something shift. Not a burden lifted exactly, but a door quietly closing behind me. When we were done, he slid a copy of the finalized agreement into a fresh folder and passed it across the desk. "Anna," he said gently, "he might come back. People do, when the money dries up, when the excuses run out." I looked him in the eye. "If he does," I said, "he'll have to find another reason." He gave a soft, respectful smile. "You were always sharper than they thought. I was always quieter than they needed." I stood, gathered my bag, and shook his hand. As I walked out of the office and into the cold light of day, I didn't feel vengeful. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. Not from responsibility, but from the weight of someone else's entitlement. He had thought my silence meant I wouldn't act. He was wrong. And now legally and finally, he could no longer reach back for the hand he had already let go. The transfer took less than 15 minutes. A few signatures, a notarized stamp, a folder handed from one hand to another. Just like that, my name was no longer tied to the business. But more than that, it was now tied to something far more enduring. The Haven for Elder Women was a quiet little organization run out of Anchorage. No flash, no fancy websites, no buzzwords, just warmth, meals, beds, shelter for women like me, mothers, widows, grandmothers, left behind after giving too much for too long. When I called them, the director answered herself. Her voice was tired but kind. When I explained what I wanted to do, she didn't interrupt. She just listened. And when I told her the number, $482,000. She gasped, then began to cry. I don't want a plaque, I said gently. I don't want a name on a wall. What do you want? She whispered. I told her. A bench. Just a simple bench outside with a plaque that says this: for every mother left standing alone in the snow, you are not forgotten. She promised me it would be done. I mailed the final paperwork that afternoon. Included in the envelope was a handwritten letter. I give this not because I am generous, but because I am done. I am done waiting for sons to remember the hands that raised them. I am done explaining why loyalty should not be repaid with silence. I give this so another woman does not have to sit at a curb, cold and unclaimed, wondering if she still matters. I give this to remind them we always did. It was not revenge, it was legacy. A week later he came. I was back home in Alaska, sipping tea on the front porch, when I saw the car, a rental, city plates, wheels still crusted with salt from the road. He stepped out slowly, not with confidence, not with swagger, but like a man who knew he had run out of doors to knock on. He walked up the path, paused at the bottom of the steps, and then dropped to his knees. The snow was fresh. It soaked through his pants in seconds. Mom, he said, please. I looked at him for a long moment. Not with anger, not with sympathy, with finality. The only time a son needs to kneel, I said, is when he's ready to apologize to the mother he left behind. He said nothing. I stood, finished my tea, and walked back inside. Behind me the snow kept falling, and I left the door closed. Spring came late in Alaska. It always did. The snow lingered long after the calendar said it should have melted, as if the land itself knew better than to trust a date. But eventually, even the deepest drifts loosened their grip. The ice on the creek cracked, the sun climbed a little higher, and one morning, without fanfare or warning, I stepped outside and smelled earth again. By then, I had been home for 3 months. Not a mansion, not a condo with marble counters and mood lighting, just my old cabin, wood-paneled, weather-worn, drafty around the windows if I didn't seal them right with tape and plastic, but it was mine. Every nail, every squeaky floorboard, every dent in the wood stove from years of good fires and dropped kettles. The neighbors were the same. The silence was deeper, the birdsong more familiar, and the warmth from that stove, it was better than any hollow apology could ever be. I never spoke to him again after that last visit. He never tried a second time, but Haven wrote every month. Always handwritten, always real. They told me about Esther, a 71-year-old woman who left her abusive son-in-law in the middle of the night and found a bed at Haven, thanks to a program my donation had made permanent. They told me about Brenda, who cried when someone handed her a toothbrush and said, "You're safe now." They told me about Darlene, who started volunteering at the center she once slept in, now making soup in the kitchen every Sunday. They told me about a bench. It stood just outside their front door now, simple, sturdy, facing the morning sun. On the plaque, my words: for every mother left standing alone in the snow, you are not forgotten. Sometimes I would sit by my own fire, the letter in my lap, fingers brushing the edges of the paper, and think, this is where the money was always meant to go. Not into marketing campaigns or branded mugs or investors' golf trips, but into warmth, into dignity, into hands that had given and never asked for much more than to not be thrown away. I kept a journal beside the hearth. Not a diary, I never liked that word, but a log of sorts. Memories, observations, thoughts too sharp to speak aloud. On the last page I wrote, "My son thought reputation was everything. He was wrong. Kindness is what remains when the applause ends." I didn't write it for him. I wrote it for me, so that when I grow older still, when the snow comes earlier and the light stays away longer, I will not forget what I've learned. You can survive a cold season in life. You can even survive the people who leave you standing in it. But you do not survive by waiting for their return. You survive by building your own fire and letting it burn for someone else who might need it next. These days, I don't check the news. I don't follow the market. I don't scroll through old messages. I grow herbs in old coffee cans on the windowsill. I bake bread when the air feels still. I send small checks in envelopes with no return address. And when the sun hits the lake just right, I sit outside, close my eyes, and listen, not for footsteps, not for apologies, but for birdsong, because that's what healing sounds like. Not loud, not fast, but real and warm, even long after the snow is gone. The letter came in spring. Not from him, he wouldn't dare, but from someone I never expected. His daughter. My granddaughter. Lily. I had not seen her since she was 10, the last time I was allowed to visit the house before her father stopped inviting me. Even then, I remember how she had clung to me when I left, whispering, "Next time bring your cookies." Now she was 22, in college, halfway across the country. Her handwriting was unsure, slanted, but honest. No typing, no emails, just ink on paper. "Dear Grandma Anna, Dad told us you were gone. Not dead, just not interested anymore. I believed him for a while, and I'm sorry for that. But last month I visited Haven. One of my classes partnered with them for a volunteer project. I didn't know, God, Grandma, I didn't know. Your name was on a plaque, a bench, and they told me what you did, what you gave. They said your gift saved the shelter, gave women warmth, beds, safety. I sat on that bench for a long time, and I thought, what kind of woman gives everything and never asks to be thanked? I think I know now. You were never the one who left. He was. I just didn't see it then. But I do now. If you're still in Alaska, I'd like to visit. Just for tea, just for you. Love, Lily." I read it 3 times before setting it down. My hands were steady, not because I wasn't emotional, but because something in me had healed just enough to hold joy again. I wrote back the same day, "Lily, I never left. My door was always closed by others, never by me. You're welcome here. Not for tea, not for explanations, just for you. Bring no guilt, bring no apologies. Just bring yourself. And if you still like cookies, I've kept the recipe. With love, Grandma Anna." She arrived 2 weeks later. The plane was late, the bus slower, and the taxi driver needed directions twice, but she found her way. And when she stepped onto the porch, cheeks red from the cold, eyes wide from the sky, I knew instantly she had her mother's kindness. Not her father's polish, not his ambition. Her hands were the same shape as mine. We hugged in silence. No speeches, no performances, just arms that remembered. Inside she asked for nothing. She did not probe the past. She simply made tea, set the table, and told me about books, about school, about how she wanted to study social work and maybe, just maybe, open a place like Haven one day. I watched her as she spoke, the warmth in her voice, the thoughtfulness in her pauses. And I knew, legacy is not always passed through will or wealth. Sometimes, it skips a generation and lands where it belongs. That night before bed, she stood near the fireplace staring at the flickering logs. "Why didn't you ever fight back, Grandma?" she asked. I looked up from my knitting. "Because sometimes," I said, "you don't need to fight loud. You just need to outlast the noise." She nodded slowly, and then she smiled. "Is it okay if I sit on your bench tomorrow?" "It's yours now," I said. It always was. The next morning we walked through the melting snow, side by side, to the edge of the property where the lake thawed like glass under the sun. The bench sat there, still, simple, honest. She ran her fingers along the plaque. Read it aloud. "For every mother left standing alone in the snow, you are not forgotten." She turned to me. Her eyes glistened, and in that moment, I knew I had not raised a son who understood, but I had helped shape a girl who would change the world anyway. If you've ever stood alone, on a curb, in a hallway, or at the edge of someone else's success, wondering if they'd ever look back for you, then let this be your answer. You were never the one who left. They turned the wheel. They chose distance. They set the silence in motion and blamed your stillness for the echo. You stayed. With the casserole dish that never got returned, with the voicemail they never answered, with the photo frame they didn't pack when they moved up and out and on. You stayed because that's what women like us do. We hold the door open, we keep the fire lit, we leave the porch light glowing, long after they said they were coming home. And sometimes, no one comes. Here on Grandma, True Stories, we don't shout our pain, we remember it, we name it, and sometimes, quietly, we answer it. We are not here to beg for sympathy. We are not asking for flowers or phone calls from people who never meant to make them. What we ask is simpler, sharper. that our stories be heard. Because for too long, women like us have been treated like wallpaper in someone else's house, expected to be sturdy and silent, useful but invisible. They called it strength when we swallowed our grief, patience when we waited without complaint, loyalty when we gave without limit. But here's what they never understood. Silence is not weakness. It is strategy. And memory? Memory is not clutter. It is evidence. Every unkind word you thought we forgot, we wrote it down in a language made of restraint. Every time you rolled your eyes, walked ahead, changed the subject, we took note, not to hurt you, but to know the truth. And now we tell it. If this story moved you, if it stirred something you've buried too long, then know you are not alone. If you saw yourself in the woman on that curb, if you saw your mother or your grandmother or the parts of you that no one ever thanked, then take this as your moment of recognition, because justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it wears a scarf, waits at the curb, gets mistaken for luggage, and lives long enough to write the ending herself. Here, we give her the pen. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to Grandma True Stories. Stay with us. Listen to the stories the world tried to ignore. The stories that don't trend, but linger. That don't sell fast, but stay. Because we are not done. We are just beginning. And the quietest women in the room? They are the ones the world should have feared all along.